everyone. Welcome to Rotor Talk Live, Season 6, Episode 10. Very special guest, Jeff Voigt. Jeff, how are you this evening?
Bill, I'm doing just great. Thanks very much for having me on. It's a real honor to be with you.
It's a real pleasure to have you on. We'll get into things here in just a minute. I want to make sure that we welcome everybody tonight. See, Mark White is here. Michael Wright is here. Jay Bird is here. Art's in the house. See, Akarasho, USA Drone Flyer. Let's see who else we got. Drone Shots is here. Casey Crime Fighter, welcome. Good to see you tonight, Drone News Media and Drone Shots. Okay, Jeff, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show tonight. I'm just real thrilled to get you on here. And for those of you who don't know Jeff, you're in for a real treat tonight because I'm going to say this: Jeff is one of, if not the best aerial photographers out there. I mean, his prints are extraordinary, and we're gonna take a look at some of them. But first of all, why don't you give us a background how how you got to Annapolis and why you're in Annapolis and how you got into drones and everything. So go ahead and take it away, Jeff.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks again for having me. My love of flight started with my great hero, my dad. I lost my dad about a year and 2 or 3 months ago. He was 93. He was an Air Force fighter pilot. And growing up, and I have these memories from age 2 on, he'd go to work and say, boy, when we come home, we're going to build an airplane and we're going to go out there and fly it. So we'd spend hours building these model airplanes, stick balsa wood and paper and dope, that would tighten the paper.
Yeah, with the pins. Oh, yeah.
Pins. We go out there after 2 hours of working on this thing and fly that sucker for like 10 seconds. And we'd put it back in the trunk and all the twigs, we'd turn Karen Carpenter back on and drive home, and then we'd fix the airplane together. But my point is, he was my great inspiration. We spent all the time building the airplanes, and then we'd fly them for 10 seconds and destroy them. So fast forward all these years later, drone flight, which I'm addicted to just like you. I fly twice a day. I almost have 2,000 hours of log time now in the last 4.5 years. I teach this stuff at a local community college, Carroll Community College. We have a flight school at Carroll Community College, the best kept secret in Maryland. We put the students through ground school. We get them licensed up to 107. We give them 101 flight training. And we actually connect the graduates now, starting this semester, with industry experts that are hiring and putting 107 pilots into their departments. So that's kind of the long and short of the story. But my love of flight started with Dad, but I was always shortchanged on flight time with my old man. My dad was a fighter pilot. I loved him. And I was a man pilot, never a military pilot. I think I kind of disappointed my dad when I went to the Naval Academy. And he thought I was always going to go to the Air Academy. And the Air Academy said, you're not quite qualified. And the next day, the Naval Academy said, you're brilliant. And so I took plan B and went to Annapolis and graduated in the bottom 2% of my class, thanks to my fantastic brain work. But any graduation's a good graduation. So
that's right.
I'm going to be from there.
That's right. Well, I have to tell everybody this. I really connected with Jeff because of the naval thing, and and I have shared with Jeff, like Jeff, my dad was my hero. He fought in World War II, and he was his big goal. He wanted to be a naval aviator. He couldn't because of his vision, because back in the day you had to have 20/20 vision unaided to be able to fly. So he chose aviation ordnance. That was his gig for 2.5 years on the Lexington. I think I probably shared with you, he was a plank walker, Jeff, or planko.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And the ship, it was named after the Lexington that got sunk in the Battle of the Coral Sea. And it was going to be, I forget what it had another name, and they scrapped it because of everybody really remembered the Lexington. And it was in Quincy, Massachusetts when he set sail the first time. He shared with me things about boot camp, about his drills. I mean, it was the minutia, and it was great. And one of the great things for me was personally, my son and I, we scattered part of my dad's ashes on the flight deck of his carrier. It's a museum down in Corpus Christi, Texas, and it was such a great thrill. It really was. Jeff,
That's wonderful.
why don't you tell us what's your fleet? What you have? What kind of drones do you have?
Yeah, I started flying the original Mavic Air 4 or 5 years ago. Remember the Air?
Oh yeah.
There are 27 different variations of the Air now. It's kind of funny. But we teach our students. We start with the snap tame in class. You can just see the students' eyes drop. They're so disappointed when they see a $29 drone after spending a couple of $1,000s to go to school and become a commercial drone pilot. 4 weeks later, they're flying minis. And then we step them up to Mavic 2 Pros. I always show them my Mavic 3 because this is my main bird right here. I always fly with the Mavic 3. But the Mavic 2 Pro is still relevant. I still own my original Mavic 2 Pro. I've owned an Inspire 2, Bill. And I love the Inspire 2. I mean, it looks like something that the Terminator would pull off his belt and throw at you in a science fiction movie, But I think like you, I kind of like to fly alone without drawing a lot of attention to myself.
Right.
And boy, you put that Inspire 2 in the air and people are running around looking for the crash scene, right? It's like a first responder event. But it was beautiful. Then also at school, we get the students elevated into the Matrice 210, the 300.
Oh, good.
So, from the snap tane on day 1 to 12 to 15 weeks later, they're flying a $30,000 Matrice 300, $15,000 for the aircraft and $15,000 more for the stuff you're hanging under it. So we actually teaching the students a lot about infrared, assessments. We do 3D assessments, and we really show them the basic skills. I'm not that smart, but George Colonna at school, great guy, really gets them going that way to connect them. So we fly a broad range of aircraft. It's been a lot of fun for the students.
Now, how often are classes? Are they I assume they're in the evenings, right?
They are generally, because of COVID, a lot of it went back to virtual teaching. But the hands-on stuff, the real stuff with 2 or 3 of us as commercial pilots, we've got to get out there in the field with them. But typically, it's a Tuesday and a Thursday evening virtually. And then a Saturday from, 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, or 12 until 6 or 7. So we get the night flight in as well.
Well, that's great. I mean, and I when I found out, when you told me you were going to start to do this, I was amazed because, that is, what a great way to draw people in to drones. I know, we talk about, our channels and what we do here, which, in the drone community, which is really good. But what you're doing is absolutely off the charts, Jeff. It's just, my dad was a art teacher for 40 years, and he had a passion for doing that. Well, one of the things was funny. One of the things he told me, he says, "Do me a favor, Bill, don't become a teacher." Okay. That was one of his pieces of advice to me. Well, I got into IT. So, but that was one of the things. It's kind of like with me as well. I look at our channels here, and one of my goals with my channel is to educate. And, my whole premise was, when I first got into doing the channel was, I know there are a lot of guys put some great videos out there, but they were 35, 40 minutes long. Yeah. And, and I knew even back then, even with looking at statistics, after about 5+ minutes, people are going to start to lose interest. And, right. They're going to want information in a compact form. And that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do the channel. And if most of my videos, for grins and giggles sake, are under 10 minutes. And I do that on purpose. And I try to get to the point right away. I don't like to, you're not going to see, a whole lot of extemporaneous information, when I'm doing, like, for instance, when I did a real good series of waypoints on the Mavic 2, and I got right to them.
Yep.
Yeah. and I really liked having Waypoints came out on the Mavic 3. I was so excited for that because it's an extremely useful feature, and I really like being able to do that. So that's how that that's one of the things with me, and I got again I really got to commend you for what you're doing with this, and I think that's great. And it's like in tuition at a community college isn't all that expensive either, and
Right.
and it makes it very accessible for people. So I agree. It's probably Maryland's best kept secret right there.
It's really a flight school, Bill. I mean, we really go through ground school. Not all students pass. The 107 is kind of a high bar, and I like that.
Mhm.
They don't all get through it. Those that are truly motivated and focused do get through it. We even teach them formation flight, which is kind of a
Wow.
military flight standard. We put them in a line abreast and have them fly kind of a constant bearing, decreasing range, and it's very close quartered. It requires skill and patience. I like to tell my students, when you graduate, there are no Walmart flyers. You're going to fly smoothly and gracefully. And if you're flying in front of a fire marshal at a first responder scene and he or she is looking to you to provide professional help, and you're flying this thing like a Frisbee, what does that do to that fire marshal's confidence in you as a drone pilot?
Exactly. And you touched upon a real good point here, Jeff, is, it's not all just, photography like you do, which we'll get into here in a little bit. And it's not all just, I know like our good friend, Original Dobo, Ken Dono,
Oh, yeah.
he does fantastic with his real estate photography
Yeah.
and videography. But it's really, first responders. I think it's absolutely fantastic what drones can do with that. And the abilities and capabilities, and looking at like the M30T with the thermal on it, and
Oh, yeah.
and the imaging that it can do, and what it can provide back, and it's being an all-weather type of drone, and hot swapping of batteries, and just the advances in technology. And this is one thing, and I know you've heard me say this on the channel, DJI especially, they do not waste technology, because what you see in their top tier drones that may not even be consumer drones ends up trickling down to the consumer drones. So it's a
Right.
win-win for everybody. I mean, when they do that kind of technology, that's
It really is. I'm a little worried about the whole DJI thing, in our relationship with China right now, because if the
Yeah.
Fed government says, hey, all you guys are shut down, we're grounded. We've got to find some American alternative, which probably still has Chinese chips in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, even Skydio, I mean, which is manufactured here, large number of their parts come from China, and Autel, which supposedly is an American company, headquartered up in state of Washington,
Yes.
they're made over in China as well. So I mean, it's really difficult. They're making it difficult to be able to do that. And well, I had on a few years ago, and I don't know if you remember him. He used to work for DJI, Romeo Dersher.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember him or not. And one of his big things was, and he's doing pretty well from what I understand. I think Lauren had mentioned something about that a week or two ago. But he really was a real proponent of drones for good. And I think there's a website out there called Drones for Good, or a Facebook group for that. And it's a lot of people promote the negativity, and that's one thing I'll always stay away from on this channel, and not give people who, fly their drones over stadiums and things like that, give them any airplay. But what I will give airplay to is when, you'll see, you go out to either Drone XL or Drone DJ on any given day, and you'll see, a person is rescued.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That kind of thing. I think that's absolutely positively fantastic. So, Jeff, what got you started to take aerial photographs and start your own business?
Sure. When I was a civilian pilot, I was flying over West Texas. We were flying east. The sun was setting behind us. We were flying between these big cumulus clouds. The sun was low. The colors were incredible. The lightning, the orange, the pinks. I was looking out the cockpit more than I was flying the King Air, twin engine turboprop aircraft. that was my epiphany, Bill. I said, daggone it, I like looking out the window more than I like flying the aircraft. So that was my epiphany. And years later, it took, 20, 30 years for the technology to catch up to my aspiration, which was to put a drone in the air, fly it safely with a Hasselblad camera mounted on a 3-axle gimbal with a wide angle lens with great image quality. I mean, it's an addiction like it is to you. I fly twice a day. It's ridiculous. So that was kind of how I stepped up to this. I've always loved ground photography, but to get it up in the air, I call all my drones a 400-foot tall tripod. Mobile.
Yeah.
You know?
It really is. And one of your shots has intrigued me, and I think you might have a name for it. And you've taken that picture. You want to, and maybe you can give us a little background. You take a picture. You were trying to get to the same position to take that picture in the fall, the winter, the spring, and the summer. Tell us a little bit about that. I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, Triton Light at the Naval Academy is it's a nav aid. It's literally a light that ships look to avoid that point of land at the academy. And so, summer solstice, autumn equinox, winter solstice, etc. I want a collage. I want 4 images of those seasonal changes because I want to see where the sun dances across the horizon. So I took the summer solstice. That was a piece of cake, but I forgot to take the latitude and the longitude of the thing. So for the next 2 months, I was trying to fly back to the same place, take a bunch of images. I'd have the actual original image with me. I'd be looking at my FPV screen. I'd be looking at the image, not pull it down a little bit, make it a little bit closer. I finally got the magic sauce. It's 153 feet up and 35 degrees down from that tip of land. And that's the magic sauce. So now I've got it. March 21st is coming up. So that'll be the next period of time where I'll take my 4th picture. And I've got some images. I've got 3 of the 4. And one of them, I just didn't line the aircraft up well at all. So I'm going to have to wait another 9 months to get that better image. But I'll show those to you in a little bit as well.
Yeah, sure. That's fantastic. And, like you, I think that's one of the things that really appeals to me is, so many people get the drones for their video capabilities. Okay. And all these drones that we're talking about and all of Jeff's drones, I mean, just doing incredible with that. But so many people overlook the fact that the cameras on these drones are absolutely exceptional in just taking still pictures. I know, and I know you probably looked at a lot of good images from Ron Braun. I call Ron the Jedi Master of sunsets because Ron and his wife came down a few years ago, and we went to the beach during sunset, and just some of the images that Ron took were just, amazing. Well, he's a photographer by trade, okay? And he's just applied his craft to drones, and he does such an exceptional job. And like you, whenever I see any of his images, I'm just like, wow. I mean, it's just exceptional. But one of the big things, and I think you'll probably can attest to this, is you have to have incredible patience sometimes, especially with, for example, if you're doing a hyperlapse,
sure,
and you get impatient. If you're doing a hyperlapse where the craft is still, your drone is still, that's one thing. But if you're doing it, say, in the cine mode or the slow mode, it gets, you got to be careful. Like your thumb can get kind of locked up, and your hands can cramp up and that kind of thing. You got to, it takes a lot of skill to do some of these things.
It does. It really does. And the patience is one thing for sure. It's, by the way, with the Mavic 3, you can put it in cruise control now.
Right.
And that's great. Boy, that's great for cinematic shots. It really helps.
That was a real, when DJI came up with that, I was just doing cartwheels. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And I first tried that, believe it or not. When I did, I rarely fly at night. I maybe that many times since I've been flying drones have flown at night. Yeah. And I did one up of our clubhouse up at the complex that we live in. and I used cruise that night, and it worked. I mean, it was like the second time I used cruise, but it was exceptional because I really wanted to focus on the camera, and I wanted to try to get the back of the pool area because our pool's really lit up at night, and it was just made some gorgeous videography. And having that cruise is, and Marcus is right, and he's kind of coined. I don't know if this is coined a phrase. We all get excited whenever a new release is coming out, but he always will say this, and he's right. DJI will come up with something we didn't know we need, and then we come out with it, and then it has to be something that we got to have. And more often than not,
that's the truth.
It's somewhere. It's some type of software, some type of thing that they and see. That's the beauty of not just DJI but other drone manufacturers. Getting in there with these software updates, can make a huge difference for a lot of these drones, Jeff.
Sure can. We teach the students, you get a software update, you better look at all your settings and reset everything, right? Because your return to home is going to be 10 feet instead of 390. And you just got to be careful. One thing you mentioned, I wrote this down. I like to make them. I'm an ambassador anytime I'm flying, because if somebody approaches, how it goes. It's either going to be really pleasant or it's really going to be unpleasant. And 99% of the time, I think my experience, it's very pleasant. Anytime I have parents walk up with a little child, maybe a 5-year-old, 5 minutes later, that 5-year-old's flying a $3,000 drone in front of mom and dad. Jeff's overlooking it, but that little boy or girl is flying a drone. And, when the three of them walk away, what do you think the parents' conversation is about drone pilots in general? Those guys are okay.
Yeah.
They're regular folks. They cared about my baby. And, it's a genuine effort on my part. And I try to impart that with everybody that I fly with, including my students. My students just give me a big kick. I love them all.
See that's fantastic. And, you're like my dad, because you really get, I can sense that joy that you get out of being able to share things like this. And, it's almost kind of like a second career, so to speak, and I know, I know, for example, I know you're not in it for the money. You're in it for helping all these students being able to accomplish their goals. Well, one of the things that I wanted to say this about the Part 107, especially, I had talked with a private pilot, and he he decided to go. He didn't have to take the test, but he took it anyway. And what he told me? He said, Bill, he said, that test is pretty much what we have to take when we're for going for your pilot's license, which I really kind of thought, because there is so much in there, Jeff, and it's gotten better because I've done, of course, my recurrent, and I'm all set. I took that about a year ago, but one of the things that I can say about that is, there are some things in there that a drone pilot will never, ever, ever use. I mean, really. And there's some things in there that are really valuable. And one of the things that I've shared on the channel before is I wish the FAA would get their act together like the FCC, because, I'm a ham radio operator. Yep. And one of the things I can say is this is, when the FCC really has things in line, and, for example, if a person who doesn't have a license gets on the air, they find them almost immediately. Okay. They're very sharp with that. License renewal with them. It's, once you pass and you get all your licenses, all you have to do is pay $20 and you're automatically renewed for another 10 years. I mean, and it's seamless. It's really, they do a great job with that. Yeah. And in this whole business, and I wanted to get your thoughts on remote ID here, because I know, it's part of your curriculum, I'm sure, teaching your students. It's like my dad used to say, whenever things would look goofy, it's like the Keystone Cops running around being crazy. And that's what I think it is with remote ID, and, having to fly at fields like that are AMA approved and things like that. What are your thoughts on remote ID and everything?
No, I agree with you in large, by and large, Bill. I'm not opposed at all to remote ID in terms of allowing a first responder or a police officer or a law enforcement official to approach me. I'm very much against some mean-hearted civilian walking up for no apparent reason to give me a hard time. I think that's a safety issue, and I wish the FAA would meet us halfway. I think that the airspace is becoming so crowded now, Bill, that I think remote ID is just going to be kind of the way it goes. I'm glad that we've got AirSense now where we can see the aircrafts, on our FPV screen. But I think there's no avoiding it. But I do wish that they would look after us a little bit more diligently from a safety point of view, because I don't want some Johnny or Karen approaching me that just happened to have a bad day, and they've got no right to do that. And people say, well, it's like driving a car with a license plate. Well, I agree with that, and I'll go with that. So I think we're going down that road, but I think the FAA needs to be a little bit more sensitive to our needs as well.
I agree wholeheartedly, Jeff, and I think a lot of this is a knee-jerk reaction to, for example, I'm sure you probably have seen there was footage. Somebody was flying a drone over Fenway Park. Somebody was flying a drone over a Cincinnati Bengals game a year ago.
Yeah.
Just these people are just being so stupid. I mean, I'm sorry. I just they're the ones that cause legislators and the FAA to say, we need to do something. We need to do something. Where 99.9% of us are the law-abiding, Part 107 or hobbyist pilots who follow the rules, who do what we're supposed to do. And yet, we're ending up with remote ID. Now, like you said, I've kind of done a 180 on remote ID. When it first was coming out, I was like, not real crazy about this. Bill from Metro Jones, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Wasn't real crazy about it, but now I've done an about face, and the about face is, what first responders get this information. I think it's very good. It's and as I've said, it's part of being able to fly a drone right now. I mean, it's just you have to. It's going to be part from now on, unless they take it back. So I don't see happening. It's just one of those kind of things. So
just a quick point. I think Ken Herron's done a good job of bringing to light. He's brought some legal folks onto his show that are going after these community associations that are just putting "do not fly" drone signs up all over the place. And it's really too bad, because then it's up to you and me, the operators, to go against these associations, and we don't have a great big legal backing behind us. But I think that's shifting now. You folks that are online, YouTube creators like you, Bill, and Marcus and Ron, and the others are bringing awareness to light. And I think the legal authorities are beginning to line up with us to push back a little bit, because after all, it is the FAA's national airspace, right?
Exactly.
Not the HOA's airspace, right?
Exactly. And I'll give you an example here. This was a few years back. I met Rick. You know who Rick Smith is, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. He was coming down to Orlando. His daughter was employed there at the time. And, Orlando's only about a little over an hour from me. He says, hey, let's get together. Well, and fly. And he says, I probably got about an hour to spare. And I said, that's fine. We can do that. So, it ends up being more than an hour. Driving around Orlando, it's like driving around Washington, D.C. It's just gridlock, okay?
Yeah.
But they are so strict in and around Orlando. It probably is one of the most restricted airspaces in the country. For example, there's a TFR, a permanent TFR over Disney, okay?
Yeah, sure.
In the city of Orlando itself, you have to register with the city of Orlando. I believe this is still in effect, and pay a $20 fee to be able to fly your drone that day. You have to show proof to law enforcement if they ask you for that. I mean, it's very regulated. But for example, where I live, okay, it's completely different. Okay, there's no regulations like that, and people for the most part are pretty good about that. And I like your point. Okay, when you were talking about the Inspire 2, which, and also I'm sure you probably remember the original Mavic Air. It sounded like a
Yeah,
wasp. I mean,
it did.
a wasp nest. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean you couldn't help but attract people. But when you're flying like a Mini 3 or even a Mavic 3 right
Yep.
now,
Yep.
you don't attract crowds because those aren't loud drones. And I
So true.
I really like what DJI's done with that.
I agree with you, Bill.
Yeah. You probably heard that an Inspire 3 is coming out. I was real curious from an Inspire 2 owner what you think from what you've heard so far about an Inspire 3 coming out.
Yeah, I've seen some of the spy photos. I think you might have put one out. I know Ken Heron, I think you and Marcus talked about it. It looks kind of similar to the Inspire 2, doesn't it?
Yes.
I don't know if the price tag's going to be similar. It's probably going to be elevated somewhat, and heaven knows what kind of sensor they're going to put on that sucker. But it'll be pretty neat. I hope it's a little quieter, and it's probably got OcuSync 3 on it finally, because the Inspire 2 didn't have OcuSync on it at all. It was old technology. Boy, it was fast though. Daggone it. One day in Southern Maryland, downwind, I clocked it at 79 miles an hour. My Inspire 2. It was going to be in the next county pretty quick. Thank heavens it was so big, because your visual line of sight is extended, because the aircraft's larger. But that was about my last flight. It was just too much. And daggone it, if it lands on somebody hard, it's going to be a reportable event. It's truly an aircraft of presence when it's in the sky. I'm sure the Inspire 3 will be as well.
Yeah, and one of the things, and Lawrence actually said, I was like shooting for the moon as far as prices are concerned, but he said, he said prices are going to surprise me, because I was thinking upwards of like a base unit around 15,000. He said no. He said, but you have to remember, and then take a step back. The base unit does not include a camera. Okay,
that's right.
And and he was saying the camera's probably going to be as expensive as the base package for a drone itself. So, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I'm not sure if it was last week or the week before we talked about it a little bit. Was it may have been last week. These are not really. They're photographer drones, they're professional drones, but they're not what I would call hobbyist drones. Okay.
Great. Yeah.
Like the Inspire 2, like we were talking about the Matrice 30, Matrice 30T, these are not hobbyist drones. These are professional drones. And,
yes,
because I know, for example, when the Mavic 2 Enterprise first came out, I got a lot of emails. Bill, how do I get one? Because back then you had to contact somebody and you had to show that you were a first responder to be able to even purchase one like that. So that kind of thing, that's kind of, it's kind of nice to let people know, hey, this is what these are. This isn't a drone that you're going to, like I told Marcus, this isn't a drone that Marcus is going to take to the Snake River Canyon. Okay.
Right.
These are built for a specific purpose, and it with a purpose in mind.
Great. Absolutely, Bill.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They do a great job. Changing the subject just for a minute. I love one of your other hobbies, and it's radio controlled tanks. Why don't you just share a little bit about that, Jeff? I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. It's probably why I'm 63 and I'm single, Bill. Any gal that comes up here for dinner sees my drones, my RC tanks, and a cat, and my mom living next door, and they run. But so the RC tanks, I've always loved RC tanks. I like big, heavy things that are indestructible. And on eBay, I found this wonderful artist that takes steel, fully equipped tanks and ages them. He's got my Tiger looking like it got beat up pretty good at the Battle of the Bulge. The Tiger tank's got recoil, and it can poke your eye out, and it smokes and it exhausts and it makes noise, and it scares my cat and all my would-be girlfriends away. But so that's a lot of fun. And I bring a tank into class once, and I ask my students, is this a drone? Yes or no? It's a drone. You just don't need FAA clearance because it flies like a brick.
That's great. I like that. And, I know we've had a little bit of conversation about that as well. And, if I had some of the extra green stuff laying around, that's going to be something that I'm interested in. One of the other things, and I got to say this, you do your photography, a lot of it centers around the Naval Academy, and I just think especially the dome right there,
Yeah.
that's just such a priceless piece of architecture, and I love how you've taken so many different photographs from so many different angles and views, Jeff. It's just fantastic.
Thanks, Bill. That's nice of you to say. All the images are taken from the perimeter of the academy. The academy's restricted airspace.
Right.
And I have been asked to shoot some video for the academy. They've actually brought me on board, and I've got together with their drone pilot, and I've actually shot images from the yard, from the academy itself. And it's such a privilege to be on the yard. That's what we call it, on the yard, when you're standing at the academy, to actually shoot the chapel from the front, or the dormitory, Bancroft Hall, from the front, not the side from the sea. So it's a lot of fun to be on and off the yard.
Yeah, that has to be a real thrill. And also too, one of the things I don't think people know, that you're not originally from Maryland.
No, my dad was an Air Force officer. I was born in D.C., and then we immediately moved, me and my mom and my sister Debbie, who I think is watching. I love you,
Yes, she is. She was in the chat.
We moved to Tripoli, North Africa, of all places. My dad was an officer at Wheelus Air Force Base. And then we moved all over the country and settled back in Arizona. I love Arizona. And so, no, I'm not originally from D.C. or from Maryland. I never thought I would ever settle back next to Annapolis, because my 4-year journey at the academy was so unpleasant, getting yelled at every day, getting academic boards, and just barely graduating. Now it's a love affair to be back here. It's just great. I love it. And Annapolis, the town, has more 18th century original architecture in it than any other city in the nation. It's because Annapolis was once the capital. Then it went into a recession, and instead of mowing the buildings down, people just kept the buildings up. So the other part of the photography, Bill, is shooting outside the academy with all the beautiful architecture that there is to see out here in the city of Annapolis. Add Annapolis to your bucket list, folks. It's a gorgeous place, particularly in the summer and the fall.
Well, I got to say this. In one of the first times I saw how great Annapolis was, it was in one of the movies Harrison Ford played. Jack Ryan.
Jack
Ryan movies.
Yeah.
Where he was a part-time instructor at the academy, and it showed some of the scenes from the streets there, and I was just like, I was amazed at the architecture there. I mean, I just thought, I thought the Naval Academy in and of itself was, historic, nice buildings, great architecture, but then the rest of this, it's like a regular type of city, but it's not. And I was really impressed with, and you got to say this, I'm sure that the city and, has done a lot to preserve that area, which I think is absolutely fantastic.
They have the state capitol. The State House is the oldest continually operated capitol in the nation. Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and Thomas Jefferson debated at the same time on the same wooden floors that are in that building right now. It's just incredible. General Washington resigned his commission at the state capitol. We have exactly his print in the state capitol where he stood when he resigned his commission, which was just prior to him becoming our first president. So it really humbles you to walk around a historic site like that.
I absolutely love history like that, Jeff. I mean, that's just, you can't put a price tag on that, really. I mean, it's to be able to walk in the footsteps of where people were. I know my mom was real big. She loved going to Williamsburg, Virginia for the historical factor. Sure. And she knew me because I've been a student of history my whole life, and the impact upon that. And and how historically significant it is. And you've intrigued me enough that Annapolis is. You put Annapolis on my bucket list. Okay, I'm gonna get there one of these days for sure.
Love to host you up here, you and Valerie both.
Absolutely, we would love to see you. Love to meet your mom too. I know, and I have to say this. One of the other things I wanted to ask you too, and I know you shared this. Your dad was a pioneer with the Air Force. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Daddy flew F-84s in the Korean conflict, and he joined an air demonstration team for the Air Force called the Sky Blazers. And they flew red, white, and blue jets in tight formations. And 2 weeks after he left the team, they changed the name to to Thunderbirds. And so as my dad aged, I said, Dad, you were an original Thunderbird. He said, no, son. Then he'd yell at me a little bit and cuss in his old fighter pilot way and say I was always a Sky Blazer.
I love that.
I've still got his flight jacket, which was issued to him in 1950 it was World War II surplus. So the jacket's 73 years old.
Wow.
I've still got his stick and his gun camera from his F-84. So
I have some treasures of mine. I have my dad's Navy footlocker with his uniform in it.
Oh yeah.
I also have what he did was, and you probably remember back in the day, the part of doing aviation ordnance was changing out the 16 millimeter film in the wing cameras. Okay.
Yep.
And back in the day, they were spring loaded, and knowing the way our government works, if a spring would break, they would swap out the whole camera, put a new camera in the plane.
Right.
Well, what my dad and several of his other friends got real smart. They found some spare springs, and what they ended up doing was they shot home movies. I have home movies of my dad on his ship, of course, silent, in World War II. And it's so funny because you see a plane and it's getting ready to go down and strafe an island. Next thing you know, you see a bunch of guys on the deck in shenanigans. Of course, they're all wearing their white boxers, no shirts on.
Yeah.
And my dad said it was always hot down there. I mean, it was just he was in the South Pacific. It was just always hot. But no, and it was just so neat to see that. And then he did one. It was just the fleet, and as far as the eye could see, carrier, the battle groups, and everything. It was just amazing, and it was in color. Parts of those were in color as well too. So that's something I know. Like you, I know you treasure your items from your dad. Same for me. I treasure those items as well from my dad. And I have a display that I set up. Now, one of my many other hobbies that I did growing up was building models. Well, Revell had a model, the Lexington, but it was the current the way it is with a swept angle. Okay.
Oh yeah. Angled flight deck. Sure.
The angled flight deck. It was an Essex class carrier. Okay. Well, I really wanted to find one for him and build it and give it to him for Christmas. And what I ended up doing was I found, and it's a model it's made over in Japan, and it's fairly big, but it was the USS Essex itself. And then I found a site that sells separate decals because they didn't, as far as the hull numbers were concerned, it was only on right up at the front that they would put the 1.6. That was the hull number for the Lexington. They didn't have it on the side of the island superstructure at all. It was just there. And lo and behold, I found that. I built that for him. And it was, surprisingly enough, when I moved from Ohio down to Florida, I moved that from my mom's house when we moved her down to Florida.
Sure.
I put it in one of these huge boxes with styrofoam in it. And lo and behold, it had, these guns that I had to put on with tweezers.
Oh yeah.
Nothing broke, Jeff. It just amazed me how well that was preserved.
Yeah.
So what we did was we put together, and God bless my Valerie, she put together a display. We have my dad's folded flag from his funeral. And we have my dad had lost all his medals. So he wrote the Defense Department. He got them all reissued, and he put it on a print of the Lexington. We have a little display over in one area that commemorates my dad over there, and it's just so wonderful. And I know, like these are priceless memories to me. Okay,
Yeah.
And your memories of your dad and his time, in the Air Force are priceless as well too.
Yeah, we never grew apart, Bill. I know you never did either.
I
really.
was very fortunate. Well, one of the things that for me was a little different than a lot of my friends was I was an only child. So, they got married. My parents got married later in life. My dad was 38. My mom was like 35. And, unfortunately that meant, they passed away a little bit sooner than I would like. But,
sure.
I have nothing but good memories as far as that's concerned. One of the things that's, we constantly talk about this, and the innovation, not only that DJI comes up with, but the drone industry, and one of the things I try to keep a tab on, but I don't really talk about it a lot, is, this flying beyond visual line of sight for commercial purposes.
Yep.
Have you been talking about that with your students at all?
Yeah, we study it, and every semester we dig into it a little bit more. We know the big box stores are really pushing for it, and I think in 10 years it's just going to be kind of a common thing. Bill, what do you think?
I do too, Jeff. I think because I was reading some of these drone deliveries that had started out, some of these pilot companies. I think there was one in Virginia. I'm not quite sure, but they said that the quote unquote pilots, they don't even have an FPV view. Okay.
Right.
I just like, okay, all right. I'm like, all right, I'm lost here, folks. I don't even have an FPV view, and they're flying the drone. That just kind of blew me away.
I would not have believed that had I not heard it from you. That's amazing. I'm surprised.
It just was one of those things, and I'm surprised and I'm glad we broached this subject, because that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, everybody had said maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, Amazon, UPS, FedEx, there's going to be drones flying all over the place and everything. And here we are 3 or 4 years later, and they're still not there yet. Okay.
Yeah. The FAA, the great filter, they're taking it slow and easy on that, aren't they?
And I think that's a good thing.
I agree with you.
I've seen I've seen some pilot programs and some promotional videos on that and everything. And while it's all well and good, is it really even feasible? Okay.
Right.
Because, for example, with Amazon, Amazon has their own delivery trucks now. We live by, there's a big distribution center about 3 miles from where we live. And more often than not, I order something, it's here next day, so there's never a problem with that. So, my whole thing with, them using drones is there really a need for it? It's the same with UPS or FedEx. Although I got to say this, we're on the dead where we're at here in Tampa. We're on the dead end of we're the furthest point away on their route, just about, because UPS stuff doesn't get here till like about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, versus FedEx. It comes like at 10 a.m. in the morning, because they go from a different point in the city. Jeff, why don't you share some of your photographs with us? I would absolutely love to be able to share them with everybody.
Sure, Bill. Let me see if I could get this. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to say yes. And let me know if any of that's working, Bill.
Okay. I am not seeing it right now.
Entire screen. Let me hit that window. Let me do that and share.
Okay, there we go.
What are you seeing now, Bill?
Okay, it's multiple pictures.
Okay.
It's kind of like.
Yeah, let me see if I can't. Boy, I don't know what I did there, Bill. Sorry.
Just go up to your. You probably just could go up to your one tab up there, where you have the photos. I think it says Google. There you go.
That. Are you seeing that now? Just a bunch of images.
Yes.
All right, good. Here's a kind of a neat image of. Oops. There we go. This is actually a Mavic 2 Pro image that was up enhanced. This is in one of the buildings at the Naval Academy. It's a sunset at the Academy, and I'm in the picture only to show you the scale of the daggone thing.
Wow.
So we were able to up enhance that so that when you cropped it, when you blew it up, it wouldn't pixelate. You could put your eyeball right up against that screen behind me, and you don't see any pixels. So
that's incredible.
Isn't that neat? And that's an old Mavic 2 image, Bill. That's 5-year-old technology working for us.
Wow, that's incredible, Jeff. That really is.
Let me go to the next one here. This is a 180 pano, just overlooking the water here in Annapolis. The water was as flat and quiet as a lake bed, which is kind of neat. And I just wanted you to see that because of the actual view itself.
That's incredible. Oh, that's beautiful.
This is actually such a popular image on the website. A lot of folks buy it that it's actually one of 3 images that I've copyrighted just to protect the ownership.
Yeah, I can see why you did, Jeff. It is just it's fantastic.
A couple of summers ago, they put new copper on the lid of the chapel, and a lot of folks get on my backside. They go, "How are you authorized to fly on the yard at the Academy?" And I'm not. I'm actually flying right over the wall that separates the Academy from the town itself. That's a completely legitimate way to shoot the image. This is a dormitory back here. This is the Admiral's house. And these are civilian homes right on the border of the wall and the Academy itself. The whole town is right on top of the Academy.
Wow.
Here's an image of Annapolis. Here's the state capitol. This is Main Street. The Academy Chapel would be right about over there. This is one of those shots you were talking about, Bill. This is the summer solstice. This is Triton Light. This is the Naval Academy over here. There's some that's the chapel dome. You can barely see it. That's the state capitol dome. But the neat thing is this is about 8:24 in the evening as the sun was setting. And that's the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Here's the autumn equinox. So this is 3 months later, roughly in the same spot. And there's the sun. And 3 months later, and this is where I blew the image. I'm too low and too close, but the sun's way over here. So, you can see the sun advancing really from the right to the left as the seasons advance. So I like that. And I'll catch the 4th image here shortly. Here's a short video I shot for my students. I'll stop it there and maybe advance one more image. Let's see if I could get rid of this. Sorry about that. Where do I go here? That's the old Inspire 2.
Wow.
Dad and I always painted our model airplanes red and white, so that was out of
I like that.
Respect to Daddy. And anyway, these are just general images. Here's another chapel shot, Bill. I threw this in. I thought you'd like that one.
That's very nice.
That's a ground shot. That's an iPhone photo, so that's not really part of the show. That's not an aerial shot. But this just gives you kind of an idea of what you can capture. These are Mavic 3 images. Again, and I antique this one. If you crop it up a little bit, it gets a little bit grainy, but I did that on purpose,
Oh, yeah.
There are reasons for that. These images are for sale. It's interesting at the Academy. The Academy gift shop has picked this stuff up, so I'm pretty honored that they're paying attention to my images and doing that sort of thing. One other, and I'll close it with this unless you want more of these, Bill. This was shot on a very, very cold winter morning with about a 25-knot crosswind with the Mavic 2 Pro.
Wow.
Right at the tip of your visual line of sight, that's the Bay Bridge. In the back to the right would be Annapolis. Over here would be the Eastern Shore. And, a beautiful old abandoned lighthouse that's in a great state of disrepair, which is why it's so beautiful to look at.
That's an amazing shot, Jeff. So where were you and how far away were you from the lighthouse?
Yeah, right at the tip of my visual line of sight. I was 2,000 feet away, standing in the cold, wet surf, trying to stay as close as I could to the drone. And got the drone back in one piece. And that was a heart racing moment. This was the first 6 months of my flying experience with the Mavic 2 Pro.
Wow.
And all I could do was sing State Farm is there, because if that thing went in the water, I was calling my State Farm agent for fun.
That is just fantastic, Jeff. Your photographs are just, and one of the things, I want to share with the guys out there,
Sure.
and gals who are watching tonight. Please take a look on Jeff's website. I'm telling you, if you want to have just a fine piece of artwork, because I'll call it artwork, to hang in your home. Jeff's prints are just phenomenal. I can't say enough about that. I'm not receiving, Jeff's not sending me any commission or anything on this. So I'm just saying it with my own free will. I've known Jeff for a long time, and I've seen a lot of these photos, and I go out to his website and also to his Facebook page, which, by the way, they're in the description. So if you're interested, and I would highly suggest you guys go ahead and check that out. They would make a great birthday gift or a great Christmas gift. So, for a loved one, because Jeff's colors just absolutely pop. And it's just, these. I get a lot of, I'll probably use the word joy or happiness whenever I look at your pictures, Jeff, because they're bright. They're not, because there's a lot of photographers out there who do what I'll call dark images, but your images are there is a lot of light with your images. And I really like that. And, I think of trying to be upbeat and positive, and that's what I get from your images, Jeff. I really see that in them. And
Thank you.
You really have a great skill set. And one of the other things I wanted to comment on your video, I really liked when you were rising up. You were just, it was so slow, but you were very measured when you were ascending with the drone. I really like that, because a lot of people are real trigger happy, and next, you see the drone go flying up, but that was really measured and great. One of the things I wanted to talk about before we close is, instructing your students. One of the things, because I get a lot of questions all the time via email or Facebook Messenger about drones, and one of the things that I tell people all the time is this, and when you first get started, it's so tempting, you want to get going, you want to get up in the air. I tell people the first thing after you get the number of satellites, you're all ready to go with everything, turn your camera on if you're shooting video, okay? Because 9 times out of 10, what you're going to do if it's your first experience in flying, you're going to forget to turn that camera on. You're going to go out, you're going to think, man, I'm getting some great shots right now. I'm bringing it back, and then you pull the SD card and there's nothing on it, and then you realize, oh.
Yeah, that's a gut punch, isn't it? That's happened to me a lot. You bet.
Yeah. And the other thing is, and this is something I always tell everybody, and I know Ron and Mark has practiced this as well too, is, whatever drone we bring in the case, I have a plethora of SD cards out there.
You bet.
Just for grins and giggles, I'll never probably fill up what I have on a trip. But, for example, when I'm flying here locally, and it's right by our development is where I do my tutorials all the time.
Sure.
When I flew the Mini 3 Pro, I did like 3 flights on one battery. Okay. That's some of these batteries are just, and that's a whole topic in and of itself, how great these batteries are right now. I can't say enough about that. So
I agree with you, Bill. Yep.
one of the things I want to make sure, guys, seriously, do check out Jeff's website. Do check out his Facebook group as well too. Take a look, because I'm telling you, he has done some extraordinary things with a drone, and it's very apparent. So I highly encourage you guys to check that out. And I'm sure it would be a real blessing to him if you were to purchase something and get something and have it adorn your wall. I know when I have some money, I get a bone with Publix. We get paid once a month, which is real. It was a hard to get used to when I got employed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because it was always twice a week. But what they do is in November, we get a 13th paycheck, because the owner of Publix years ago, he wanted to have the employees to have enough money to be able to buy Christmas gifts. So,
nice.
We get a 13th paycheck then. So it's then when I set aside some money to have some fun. So this year, one of the things that I have set aside is some money. I got an eye on a couple of your pictures that I want to get done, that I'm going to hang, and it's not going to be one of these teeny little ones. Okay? I want one to adorn the room. I want it to kind of brighten it up. So that's on my list, but that'll be around Christmas time. So,
well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
Oh, you're welcome, Jeff. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on tonight. I just, my hat's off to you, not only as a aerial photographer and running an aerial photography business, but what you're doing with teaching community college. I think that's just absolutely incredible. I know your students are very blessed for having you and the devotion and the time that you put into that. I would love to have you back again sometime.
Well, I'd be honored, Bill, and it's a great pleasure to meet you this way. We've always communicated electronically, but it's good to see eye to eye, and a real pleasure to talk with your fans. Thank you.
Well, we have a great group of people that watch the show, and I know a lot of them do know you. So, you're not a stranger to a lot of them, but also want to welcome your sister tonight too. It was great seeing her in the chat. That was awesome. So hang on a second here after we close up. Guys, thanks so much for watching. As always, remember, it's a great day to fly. Take care, everybody.
Bill, you still there? Hey, Bill, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm trying to end the broadcast, not ending here.
No problem.
Well, everybody's gonna see us here. I'm gonna X out. Thank you so much for being on tonight, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Bill. A real honor being with you. Thanks very much for having me on board.
Okay, take care. We'll talk later. Okay.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
All right.